Okay, welcome back. So we just finished kind of going through our spreadsheet example here and taking a look at this growth path. And we noticed, yeah, we got this boundless growth, right? We have what we would call a balanced growth path. Um, there isn't really a steady state, right? There isn't a steady state like there was with capital. If we stop growing ideas, then our economy basically stops. So if idea growth is zero, right? If we don't come up with new ideas, then we don't lose, we don't backtrack, we don't lose output, but we don't get any increasing output, right? So we need to have more ideas and new ideas to keep the economy moving along. We don't have any capital growth, right? We'll bring that back actually somewhat shortly. And this idea of the idea stock, I want you to kind of think about here. To a certain, again, this is kind of part of the answer, right? We definitely have seen and continue to see differences in growth rates. Why is that, right? Why is it? To a certain extent, ideas are non-rival transnationally, right? They do cross borders, right? Ideas, to a certain extent, do cross borders, but not all of them, right? In the United States, we do have export controls on all sorts of things because we do not want rival countries, rival generally in terms of military power, to get their hands on some advanced technology that has been developed inside the country. So, but other things, like recipes, good recipes for chocolate chip cookies, those can easily be shared across borders, and those types of ideas can spread easily. So that if they are non-rival transnationally across countries, then boy, we still don't really explain the wide disparity in growth rates that we see. Okay, one way to help fix that, well, one argument, to help support the idea that we do see that variance, even though we haven't built that into the model, is simply that these ideas are not sort of transferable across national lines. Another similar argument would be that not all countries are willing to accept the ideas that are on the cutting edge or that are up and coming, right? Uh, Societies that are resistant to change can't absorb new ideas or can't implement new ideas quickly. And that's one of the reasons it's believed that the United States has such strong economic growth, is that we don't have a lot of barriers to implementing new ideas. We try new things. Sometimes they don't work out well. Sometimes they work out great, but we try more things, sort of open to new things more than maybe some other societies. Okay, so we do want to bring back in capital accumulation, right? We were missing that, and so we want to bring that back in and come up with a fuller model. So let's just do that. All we really need to do, all we've introduced here to our model from this sort of base Romer model to this combined solo Romer model, is that we've made capital, brought capital back. So we brought back capital into the production function, and we've brought back with that capital accumulation relation. Okay. So now everything is sort of, well, it's all the pieces that we've seen before, right? We still have, from the Romer model, we still have the labor constraints and the allocation of labor. We still have the stuff makers showing up in the production function directly, and the idea makers showing up only through their contribution to growing the stock of ideas. Now, the full solution to this is a little bit messy, but I do want you to sort of think about this in broad terms. Think about it, and I'll show you a series of little graphs here to kind of help understand this. But just like we had in the Romer model, we have A growing, right? So A, the growth of A is determined, right, by these exogenous factors. And you can kind of think of the fact that, well, if A is always growing, that means that Y is always growing. That means that investment is always growing. So you could think of that as a shift, right? Try to do it maybe in blue, these pieces that come from the solo model. And if you think about back when we played with the solo model, shifting the investment function caused an increase in steady state capital, which came with an increase in steady state output. So this is kind of not at all a rhetorical question here. What does this continual shift in investment mean for steady states? Well, the answer means that the steady state isn't really steady anymore. The steady state is sort of a moving target. We're always gravitating towards it, but we never quite get there. And while that may seem frustrating on the face of it as a solution method or lack of solution, it is kind of nice because what it does is it captures what we see in the real world is that technology advances and capital is kind of always playing catch up. So this is my poor man's animation here. Here we start off, here's a solo diagram at one point in time, but because the investment function is going to be growing, right, is going to be shifting, right? We move towards a new steady state, move towards a new steady state, move towards a new steady state, move towards a new steady state. And so you can see the crossing point here, page through my, my lame animation. As we go through this, I'm sorry, it jumps there because of the way I've got this laid out. And you can sort of see over time, that steady state is marching to the right. So again, it marches sort of, capital marches on, right? The steady state capital, or what is kind of like the steady state, isn't really steady anymore. We're always going to be gravitating towards this new higher level of capital, which is being driven by the growth in output. That growth in output, driven by the ideas, grows investment. Investment continues to exceed depreciation. And so, again, that's why I call it sort of a moving target. So this model, this sort of modified version of the Romer model, the solo Romer model, I guess we can call it, doesn't have an easy solution, but we can look at specific conditions. And so our idea of a steady state doesn't really have relevance here anymore. But what does is what we call the balanced growth path. So to understand what the balanced growth path is and what it means, let's talk about a few things here. So the growth in ideas hasn't changed, right? This is nothing new, right? The growth of ideas is still governed by the same mechanism that we set up in the first place. And the growth in ideas, again, you'll notice I changed my notation here a little bit. It's determined by those same exogenous factors. So there's nothing new there. What we're interested in is that and the growth in capital. So the growth in capital on this balanced growth path also hasn't really changed, right? This is a nice compact expression here for the growth in the capital stock, right? It doesn't really, right, again, this doesn't suggest at first glance some sort of, nice, easy solution, but we can really sort of focus on what we call a balanced growth path. Okay, this balance in the balanced growth path refers to the fact that we're neither accelerating nor decelerating, right? We're experiencing constant growth. That's what the sort of balanced means. So we're growing at a constant rate. Okay, so growth in capital along this balanced growth path is constant. So for that to be true, right, for our overall growth rate to be constant and the growth rate in capital to be constant, that requires the ratio of these two growth rates to also be constant. Okay, and the answer to my why here is, well, that answer is given right here, right? Right. If for that to remain constant, we have these two growing at the same rate. Okay, so what we'll pick up with in the next and probably last video here in this series is how can we use this to kind of take a better look at what is going on with this combined Solo roamer model.